Welcome, everyone. How many of you have watched sports on Prime Video? Can I get a quick raise of hands? Cool. So you would want to know how Prime Video, particularly Prime Video Sports, is using AI across their organization, automate, to make things faster, to make things more efficient. And that's what our talk is about today. So we're going to talk about how it's transforming live operations, media management, and broadcast scheduling with Amazon QuickSuite and Kiro. How many of you have heard about QuickSuite and Kiro, the AWS services? Nice. And are you using it right now? Okay, cool. So we will cover what those services are and how you can use it, and how particularly on Prime Video Sports, Brad Baum and his team has been using it. So to start off with, I'm Tulip Gupta. I'm a principal solutions architect with AWS, and I work with Prime Video, particularly for Brad Baum's team, to help them enable them to use this AWS services for their daily operations, for their daily management across Prime Video Sports. So when we talk about Prime Video Sports, there's media operations workflow. Like, as you can see on the chart on the right, it has grown linearly. So we started up in 2016 with a late night show, and where we are right now, 2025, 6 and plus, we added Masters this year. We have like soccer going on, WNBA, NASCAR last year, NBA last year. So the number of sports that Prime Video has been broadcasting has been increasing. And so when you have this increase, it's also like increases in media operations, workflow, orchestration, and asset management. And so right now they have like over 5 million media assets, 500 plus global users. So how do you manage all of this? And so that's where live event support gets really critical. And they also have like a global user space across content access and distribution. And so GenAI workflows has been deeply integrated across all their media operations to make it smoother, make it faster, make it easier for the people who work out there. And so that brings us to agentic AI. And you probably have heard that word quite a bit, agents, agentic AI, and AWS has been investing in that a lot. And so the 4 key areas that we have identified from left to our right is first one is improve workforce productivity. That's where Brad Baum's going to come and talk about how they're using QuickSuite particularly to increase their workflows, like how they can automate a lot of things that they do manually right now. Then accelerate software development. And that's where we have seen a lot of people use IDs and tools like Kiro to basically develop an application or a tool, even for non-developer backgrounds, where people who come from non-developer backgrounds can use it and learn and develop tools out there. And then third one is automate business workflows with custom agents. That's where, again, we have QuickSuite coming in where you can automate your workflow. And the last one is how you can transform your business with Agentic OS. And when we talk about the tools around it, so the first one is how you can automate workflows. These are sales, marketing, HR. And one of the need for that is out-of-the-box solutions, enterprise connectors, scale deployment. And that's where QuickSuite comes in. So for folks who do not know, and I have slides as well on that. So QuickSuite has the ability to connect a lot of various sources into one system or one place where you can look up your data, you can search through it, you can summarize it, you can do a lot of tasks out there. Then comes accelerate software development. And that's where we have vibe coding. We have integrated AI into coding, testing, development. And this is where the need is for deep DevOps ID integration for AI developer collaboration. One of the things we have seen with Prime Video is for the past few months, as I've been working closely with them, is how they have been able to kind of accelerate their growth, even, for the non-developers to be able to quickly onboard onto Kiro, onto like other IDs, and be able to use AI as their friend, as their assistant to develop code and to develop those tools. And that's where Kiro comes in. The third one is automating business workflows with custom agents. And this is where you have built differentiated agents spanning across models. So there's model agnostic tools. And that's where Agent Core. So for folks who do not know what Agent Core is, it's basically like if you build a prototype, let's say you go into Kiro and you build a prototype. Now you want to be able to scale it. And this Agent Core service on AWS allows you to deploy it on AWS and use AWS resources to scale it out to, your hundreds of users, your, thousands of users out there. So that's where Agent Core is really helpful. And Strand Agents helps you build, it's a lightweight OS framework that helps you build agents really quickly. and Bedrock for your model access and all. And the last one is enterprise-wide platform for secure governed agent deployment is one of the other focus areas that we have seen. And that's where we see the need for foundation for training, orchestration, evaluation. And we have SageMaker AI and Bedrock. This is where you can use SageMaker to quickly access models that are not there on Bedrock. Bedrock has a lot of models that you can use. You can build agents. These are some of the services that we have out there. For the purpose of this talk, we are going to focus on a Kiro and Quick Suite. So, Quick Suite. And for folks who do not know, the Quick Suite comes in really useful. Let's say you have your data sources in Salesforce, you have data sources in Slack, your Outlook email, and now you want to be able to search everything and get your answers quickly. So for example, I actually use Quick Suite. They have to give me a daily recap of what happened yesterday. And it'll remind me of the things that I haven't responded, the emails that I haven't responded, or Slack I need to follow up. And I also have been using it quite a bit. Every Monday, I'll send out an email with what my current week looks like. So you can use search across different data and be able to get answers. And particularly for Brad Boehm, he's going to talk about how he's able to look at different NBA tech data feeds and live feeds and be able to get answers quickly on his end using Quick Suite. And to see how Quick Suite looks like, we have a lot of features. And I'm going to quickly cover just the base some of them. And so we have from left to right spaces where you can build knowledge bases. For what do we mean by knowledge bases? So when you have data and documents, it's not searchable. These are just words. So you need to be able for the machine to search it. And that's when it get tokenizes or get numbers assigned to them that machine can easily search. And that's called a knowledge base. So spaces is an area in Quick Suite where it can bring in all these knowledge sources and create a knowledge base, and helps your chat agents to quickly search through it and get the answers you want. Research is where you can deep dive into any topic. It takes some time to run, but if you're trying to get deep into a topic, to search the web, search your documents, and give you all the answers related to it. QuickSight is the BI tool that we had previously. It's built into Quick Suite right now. It's a business intelligence tool that you can also integrate to Quick Suite. Flows are repeated tasks. So for example, every evening I want my daily recap. I have it in a repeatable manner, and it gives me a notification every evening, okay, you did not respond to certain emails. You need to reminder to talk to Rachel, who's my teammate out here. And so it gives me reminders every day on what I have missed and what I need to do the next day. And then comes automate, where you can, if there's complex multi-step workflow, let's say you want to be able to do an A task based on B or C happening. So if you have a complex workflow, that's where automate comes in. And obviously there's the middle layer for governance and data security is very important in agentic applications. Where we have responsible, we have guardrails that it only answers to the questions you have asked and not anything around except that. And it has a lot of 40 plus data connectors, and you can also upload data, and it also connects to Bedrock models, the different model versions that we have on Bedrock, including Claude and Nova, and you can take actions on it. A little bit about Kiro before I hand it over to Brad. Talked quite a bit, but for Kiro it's the ID. It's an AI ID prototype to production. So you can do spec-based development. What do we mean by spec? So you basically say hey, I want you to build me an app and UI where I can look up all the workout routines and check out what my day looks like. It'll be able to build out an app really quickly. And so for example, for Brad Boehn's craze, they wanted to be able to search through their data store and build sort of a registry where they can connect to the data store in the backend and build this a tool or API tool that can search it. And so they built a whole MCP around their data store using spec-based development plus vibe coding, and be able to just natural language prompt out there and get the data from their data store from their backend. So if they're searching for a particular video on their media asset management store, they're able to just search through a query I want build an MCP registry where if I give it a prompt or a tool to search for certain NBA video footage, it'll be able to bring it back. And more on that, how Brad's going to cover it. And these are all natural language prompts, and you can also have hooks. Particularly, I have built hooks as well. For example, for my monthly what a task I've done. I've, kind of built a hook that would automate the task every 2 weeks and kind of create a report of all the things that I've done in the past 2 weeks. So it's easy for me to go and enter it into different, in my Salesforce side of thing and like wherever I want to enter it. So here's a quick video on spec driven. You can see on the right, we put in a natural language prompt out there, and it's able to so there's Vibe and spec mode. Vibe is an AI assistant. On the spec side, they would have all the design from requirements. It builds out the whole SDLC cycle out there. So it'll start with the design document, and it'll go to requirements, and you're going to actually implement it. So create all those documents for you right away. For Vibe coding side of things, you give it a prompt, and it's able to build just the thing you want. So if you want to add a feature to your current code base, or if you want to add a feature to your current application, you just use Vibe mode. And spec is more like it does the whole SDLC side of things. And that's it. You give it a language mirror on, as you can see, it will be your requirements, and on the top you can see design and task list, and it'll every now and then it'll prompt you to see it's doing the right work, and you as the select run. And again, we don't want the agents to basically do changes where we do not want it to do changes. So it asks you if there's human in the loop approving changes before it's actually done. And then agent hooks are repeatable tasks that you can trigger events based on, if you want to be able to execute in the backend. For example, all the tasks that I did in the last 2 weeks, there's an agent hook that runs every 2 weeks and gives me all the tasks that I run in 2 weeks, so I can enter the details on what I did. That's one of the hooks I run. With that, I'll hand it over to Brad to talk about how he has been using QuickSuite in Prime Video.
Thanks, Tulip. So I'm going to talk a little bit through some of the use cases that Prime Video Sports is using both of these tools, QuickSuite and Kiro. We've deployed both of these at scale in production, and we're getting a lot of different use cases out of both of them. And I'm going to talk just on a few of the sort of highlights of things that we have been able to execute. Starting with QuickSuite, and I'm sure all of you have kind of experienced this. We have tons of documentation sitting around. Some of it's SOP documentation, some of it is spreadsheets that has relevant information. And typically this stuff's going to be in a Google Drive or some sort of a cloud shared storage. And a lot of times you're trying to find information, but you have to remember where you saved it or what document it's in. So what we've been able to do is sort of build out a media operations knowledge base of all this information by placing all these documents into a Google Drive. In our case, we're using Google Drive, but you could integrate this into a variety of cloud shared storage platforms. Get those documents into a centralized repository, and then be able to use natural language to ask questions about those. So it's become a real big benefit for us, because I can take documentation about our programming schedules, or documentation about shoot schedules, or SOPs about how we manipulate files throughout our facility, put all of those into Google Drive. And this can be a combination of spreadsheets and Word documents. And then once all those are in my centralized data source, then I can point QuickSuite and point a chat agent directly at that data. And that just gives me the ability at that point to use natural language to just ask questions and get back those responses really, really quickly. The way that we've sort of structured this is that we have, like I said, some of these SOP documents, a number of sort of shared spreadsheets that we're using across our group. And then we also have what are called tech reports. When we do a live event on Prime, there's generally going to be a after the event tech report generated, which will document all the technical issues or potential things that are noteworthy that we want to, make sure that they get documented for the next game so that we, can address those issues. So we put all of these documents into our Google Drive, and we have multiple chat agents pointed at all of these docs. And as I advance here, and I think it'll just play. There we go. So here's an example of asking a question about pulling the schedule for NBA games that are airing on Prime. So in this case, QuickSuite's looking at my very large repository of documents in Google Drive, and it's able to find that very specific document that has our programming schedule. And within a few seconds, it's going to mine that entire repository of documents, and it's going to pull an answer back for me. And you can see it's going to present that information in a table. So now I have sort of like the beginnings of the response that I want, but I can sort of like double click on this and ask a follow-up question, because now that I have the schedule of our games on Prime, now I'd like to reference which truck each of those games used. We have multiple mobile production units that are deployed across the country. In this case, it's actually going to those tech reports, which we have for every single game, and it's able to blend both the programming schedule and the tech report information. So now I have a new table that's not only giving me the schedule, but it's also giving me a column for which truck the game was produced in. So this is sort of like bridging multiple documents to be able to pull that answer. So now if I want to ask a follow-up question, because as we do live events, we're bringing media from those events into our asset management system, I would like to be able to find the path where media from a specific game is coming in. That can be something that can be confusing for somebody trying to chase down where are the clips coming live for this game. So now you can see another response. It's able to pinpoint the exact ISG, which is the storage path that the footage is in, based off of the question that I asked. And now if I want to ask a follow-up question here about our shoot schedule, where we send ENG shooters out to some of these games to actually shoot in addition to the traditional broadcast, now it's running another search. So these 4 examples that I just ran all pulled from different documents within our Google Drive. And I think the piece of this that can be challenging is that a programming schedule and a shoot schedule can look very similar to a language model, because they all have columns listing teams, they're listing dates, they're listing very similar information. So one of the ways that we've been able to engineer to make sure that QuickSuite understands like what data is actually in these documents, and this is especially something that we've done with a lot of our a lot of our spreadsheets, Excel docs, is that we have a tab within the doc that has the tables of all the information, the schedule or whatever it might be, and then we add a second tab that actually describes what the data is, how it should be used, and that information is feeding back into QuickSuite. So as it's running through its index of documents and trying to parse your question and determine where it should look for the answer, it has some breadcrumbs based on that instructions on the documents. And before we started adding that, we could see a little bit of bleed over. You could ask a question about the schedule and it might pull from a shoot schedule, not a programming schedule. But we quickly realized that by giving it context of what the document represents, it was very much improving the accuracy of the model being able to answer those types of questions. So as you kind of walk through what I just did, we have different data sources, but they're all in one central document repo, right? I've got tech reports, I've got a shoot schedule, I've got storage locations, and I have league schedules. And this is just a few examples of what's in our Google Drive, but these are the most relevant ones for this example. And you can see that those questions, which were very different in terms of what the questions were all referencing the same Google Drive repository of documents, but the QuickSuite agent was smart enough to be able to know where to look for the information and then present back an accurate response. So now I'm going to shift over to Kiro. And I think one of the things that I found by using Kiro, and I'll preface this by saying that I'm not an SDE. I've never written a line of code in my life, nor do I have any aspirations to write code. So when I first sort of saw one of my coworkers using this, I was like thinking that this was something that would not really be in my purview, and he was having a lot of success with this. But that has all changed in the last few weeks, and now I've really been able to dive in and use this in a sort of a daily sort of way. And I want to talk about some of the examples that we've been able to actually execute spec-driven development and code generation within Kiro. And, we're directly using all of these tools to, ultimately our goal as being sort of like the media operations team for Prime Video Sports is we're trying to increase efficiency and productivity for folks that are searching for media or trying to manipulate media in some way. They may find media, they need to distribute it somewhere. They may need to do some sort of a secondary task with the media, or primarily they need to find the media. And all of these tools are really designed in our world to add more functionality to those systems and improve the user experience really by incorporating more agentic AI into those pipelines. So one of the first things that we did when we started using Kiro is our asset management system has a really robust API. So you can do pretty much anything you want to do within the API, but somebody like me does not know how to manipulate an API directly. So, it does take a little bit of extra skill sets to be able to like build a workflow, to be able to execute code, to call an API. So, we were able to stand up an MCP server, and that's a model context protocol server, which essentially gives Kiro the ability to talk to our media asset management system and make calls to various functions within that MAM system. And traditionally, like a lot of this stuff would be a lot of manual steps, or you'd have to write code to be able to actually execute that. The MCP server allows us to use Kiro as a front end by using natural language to just give it the instruction of what you want it to do. And that way you're able to talk to your asset management system and actually perform tasks within that MAM system purely by just typing in natural language and giving an instruction. So we've built multiple tools within that system to be able to have Kiro talk to the MAM. And we're leveraging everything through natural language, which has made a huge sort of impact for us to be able to quickly execute, tasks within our MAM system. So I'm going to show you sort of like one of the examples of how we're using this. We provision a lot of user access within our asset management system. I think we have probably 500 plus active users, but we're onboarding new users constantly. So the process to onboard a new user, if you did it traditionally, it's a lot of like clicking and assigning roles and permissions to a user, entering a lot of information. And if you're doing this at scale, you have to do one at a time. There's no real batch functionality for that. So I'm going to roll this video so you can sort of see how this has been built. We have the tools to create new users now integrated into Kiro. So I can just tell it I need to create a new user for this user, and I want to give it the specific role that I want. And I want to clone an existing user. So I have a user in my system. I know what their permissions are already. So I just want to say, make another user for this new person, but mirror all the permissions of the person that I already did. But in this case, it's like, oh, wait, I want to either add or subtract one specific function from that role. So I want to clone this user, but add one additional permission or take away a permission. And all of that is just being executed by Kiro. And once you execute that code call, then as you let it finish that process, the user gets created. And then I can jump back into my asset management system, and you can see the Albert Einstein user has been created, and all the permissions are set up exactly cloning the other user with the delta of the additional component that I gave it. So this has been a huge time savings because you can do this in batch. You can say, I need to make 8 new users, clone off this, and then you can give it the parameters of anything you want that's different. And this has been a huge time saver for us. And I think really this is just the beginning of incorporating these types of functionalities directly from the Kiro UI to avoid having to go in, because the time to do all of this is it's just a lot of work that most people don't want to have to do this. It can really be a time suck in the process of your day. So the second example that I want to talk about that we're using Kiro for is on NBA schedule building. And, Prime Video has the NBA on Prime package this year. It's our inaugural season. And one of the things that we do on a daily basis is we record every single NBA game going on in the league. But we're not just recording one feed of the game, we're recording multiple feeds of the game. We have options to record individual cameras from all the arenas. We can record a variety of feeds. So we've kind of come up with a formula of which feeds we want to record on certain days, but we also have channel constraints because there are more feeds available than channels that I can record on. So I know what my maximum number of record channels are, and I know that I have a desire to record the max number of feeds, but there are some days where the schedule is very heavy in the NBA. There could be, 12, 13 games on one day. So if I want to record all the feeds that I would expect, I'm going to run out of channels at a certain point. So using spec-driven development, we were able to give Kiro a task to give it an example of our schedule, give it some rules on certain days. This is the normal complement of records. But if you run out of record channel capability, look at the NBA schedule and determine which teams are higher in the standings, and let's prioritize those feeds over teams that maybe are not going to be in the playoffs, that are less relevant for our content creators. And basically in a matter of a couple of minutes now, it's generating that schedule. We're still doing a human review of the schedule because I do want to make sure that something that it's not accounting for, that I know about, that's not just a part of the process that it's using, is being accounted for. But I'd say we're getting probably 90% to a schedule that can just be copy and pasted, and it's reducing the amount of time. I mean, we were spending like a couple hours a week putting the schedule together because there are just a lot of variables on a day-to-day of what the schedule needs to be. So this has been a really great tool for us to be able to save a ton of time, generate an accurate schedule, and really change the way that we approach that whole process. And I honestly wish that we had this earlier in the season, because we were putting this grid together manually every single week up until where we started to build this workflow out. So you could see we have all the games listed, but then there's 4 feeds for most of the games. A few of them only have 1 or 2. And then we're trying to set what the network is, what the transmission path is. And a lot of this is a lot of manual work, and we've reduced this down to a much smaller footprint. When we talk about spec-driven development, this is just the beginning of the prompt that we built. The way spec-driven development works is that you're actually writing up instructions for what you're trying to build, what you want your outcome to be, and give the model as much information about what you're trying to accomplish. And then what it'll end up doing is take your original narrative. This is truncated, but this is like part of what our original prompt was. And it's going to go through this process of taking my user requirements. It's going to rewrite its own requirements. So it's going to look at mine, and then it's going to maybe put it into a better readable, like for Kiro, to be able to have a better understanding of what your intent is. And then it's going to generate a design of what your application is going to look like. And then it's going to create a task list. Then you have an opportunity to review all of that. And if everything looks like it's good, then you now have code that you can execute, and then you can run it, and then you can continue to iterate off of that if you want to make changes, or you want to, modify whatever your original plan was. And I think the last example here, and I find this one to be really interesting because this is something that I would have never even attempted to do personally. With NBA basketball, there are XY coordinates of where players shoot the ball from. So if a player shoots the ball from the left corner 3 of the court, that is an XY coordinate that can be pulled from the NBA's API. The challenge with that is that the court is in a 100 by 100 grid, but it's obviously not a square. And in addition to the fact that it's not a square, there's a lot of curved regions of the court, especially around the 3-point line and down in the paint. So if you wanted to plot an XY coordinate, it's not black and white where you could say anything on this row of X equals this is going to be this region of the court. You either need to be a mathematician or a programmer, or maybe a combination of both, to be able to plot that spot directly on the 3-point line of, is that in the left corner 3, or is that a mid-range 3? So what we were able to do is give Kiro this task. Ultimately, the goal here was to take an XY coordinate and turn it into a label, like a label being a left corner 3, or in the paint, or a left mid-range jump shot. The NBA has labels for all these locations on the court. A user searching for media doesn't care about X equals this Y. They want to know, hey, I want 3-pointers from the left 3, for a Steph Curry or something like that. So we were able to send Kiro on its way to perform this task. And ultimately what it was able to do, if you have a shot of Anthony Edwards making a step back 3-pointer, the coordinates, the XY coordinates right there, 22.65, and I can't really read that, but I think 90.2. Those numbers mean very little to a user, but to be able to take those numbers, translate them to an actual labeled court region, you can see on the third image there's a little dot on the blue section, and that's where Anthony Edwards actually made that shot from. That's going to convert those coordinates into the left wing 3 court region, which is what our user actually cares about, is they want to search for all 3-pointers by Anthony Edwards from that location, possibly. So now you have metadata that is applied to the asset in your MAM that is completely filterable and searchable at that point. I think the last thing that I would mention is, these examples that I'm kind of walking you through, these were things that we had walked through over the last few weeks. And I think these were all really sort of like valid and tangible examples of things that we are doing. But this has become a daily thing for me personally. And I know for folks on my team, the sort of like, it's almost like a limitless tool where if you have access to league APIs, you have access to data sources, and you have all of these things that you can connect into Kiro, you can really build kind of anything that you want. Especially since you're prototyping, you can stand something up, you can really iterate it, figure out what's working and how you want this to be executed. And then it gives you that roadmap for when you do decide that you want to deploy something into production. You have a tangible prototype and a POC that really, can demonstrate what your vision is ultimately. So I'll hand it over back to Tulip.
Thank you, Brad. So just to recap, it's not just Brad's team in Prime Video Sports. Across Prime Video, we have been seeing a surge in using Kiro and using QuickSuite across playback and other Prime Video Sports areas. And it's not just engineers who come from a typical developer background. There's non-engineers who haven't coded in a long time or haven't ever coded are able to build out these prototypes, these tools pretty easily, just, giving Kiro a few prompts. And so just to, kind of reiterate what Brad was saying, it has increased productivity. So you can streamline a weekly recurring task. We saw all the NBA scheduling out there that they were able to basically streamline it and resulted in time savings. So they went from overdoing it for more than 3 hours to less than 20 minutes earlier. That's what we saw with Brad, with the MCP registry as well as the NBA scheduling. Then accelerating software development. This is where I personally have seen across Prime Video, so many people have been able to use Kiro in a little bit of training, and they're able to build out prototypes. And the number of things that we have been seeing coming out of Prime Video is amazing, in terms of their playback side, their sports side, using Kiro for every single thing that they can manually, that they've been doing manually, they can automate. And obviously QuickSuite that they're able to use to automate a certain task, where they have data across their spread resources. You saw from Brad's example earlier where they had data at Google Drive. They had data and in Outlook. They were able to bring in all the data in and be able to search through it quickly. And obviously automation using AI, more precision and increased productivity. And so a manual task, which takes a long time, you're able to reduce it using AI. And with AI, obviously, there are certain cases where you want to bring a human in the loop and verify if the results are right, but it overall increases the productivity and lets them to give Kiro or QuickSuite a prompt. While it does its work, they're able to work on something else and come back and see what the results are. So it overall increases your productivity as well. So what makes this agentic future so compelling for Amazon is that these agents are going to change the scope and speed at which we can innovate for customers. And that's what our CEO, Andy Jassy, has been saying as well. And with that, I will end this session. And thank you for coming and joining this session today. Hope you like it. Thank you.